Hello friends, today we are going to be focusing on dramatic monologue. This is a type of poetry that I bet you're actually more familiar with than you realize. So what is it? Hopefully we all know what dramatic means, right? Something that relates to drama or theater or a performance. It also means something really striking or sudden, right? Something that's done dramatically. The next part of a dramatic monologue is the word monologue, which can be broken down into two pieces. The first part, mono, means like alone or one, like only one. And then the suffix log means to speak or speech. So when you put that together, you have one person giving a speech. So dramatic monologue has two definitions. The first is that it's a self-conversation. So one person who is speaking to themselves or someone else, and through this long speech, they reveal something about themselves. In literature, this usually takes the form of a poem that showcases the speech or conversation of a person in a dramatic manner. Basically, what that definition means is that a dramatic monologue has to have three criteria. It needs to be a single person delivering a speech on an aspect of their life. An audience may or may not be present. And the speaker reveals their personality and motivations through this speech. Okay, so one person, like, giving a very long speech, and what's most important is that that speech reveals something about their personality or their motivations. There are three different types of dramatic monologues. The first is psychological or philosophical, which is essentially when a character is revealing their inner thoughts. So I have a clip from the movie Caddyshack, and for those of you who haven't seen this movie before, basically the premise is kind of a goofy greenskeeper interacts with a bunch of people who are at a very wealthy country club. So this is Bill Murray, and he's going to give a psychological monologue.
What an incredible Cinderella story. This unknown comes out of nowhere to lead the pack. At Augusta, he's on his final hole. He's about 455 yards away. He's going to hit about a 2-iron, I think. Well, he got all of that. The crowd is standing on its feet here at Augusta. The normally reserved Augusta crowd going wild. For this young Cinderella who's come out of nowhere, he's got about 350 yards left. He's going to hit about a 5-iron, I expect, don't you think? He's got a beautiful backswing. He got all of that one. He's got to be pleased with that. The crowd is just on its feet here. He's a Cinderella boy. Tears in his eyes, I guess, as he lines up this last shot. He's got about 195 yards left, and looks like he's got about an 8-iron. This crowd has gone deathly silent. Cinderella story, out of nowhere. A former greenskeeper now about to become the Masters champion. It looks like a miracle. It's in the hole! It's in the hole!
Hey, young fella, I was hoping to...
Okay. So in that speech, Bill Murray is revealing, right, that his dream of being an underdog, a no-name gameskeeper who rises to, be an excellent professional golfer. The next type of dramatic monologue is actually kind of a conversation. So two people might be talking to each other, but one person in the context of that conversation takes a minute and speaks for a really long time. So this clip is from the movie Rudy, which is based on a true story. And basically the premise is that Rudy was was definitely an underdog. And then he walked onto the Notre Dame football team and made it onto the team. It's based on a true story.
Tell Jake to make sure the tarp's ready. We'll check with the weather service by 5, and we'll make a decision then. Hey. What you doing here? Don't you have practice?
Not anymore, I quit.
Oh. Well, since when are you the quitting kind?
I don't know, I just don't see the point anymore.
So you didn't make the dress list. There are greater tragedies in the world.
I wanted to run out of that tunnel for my dad. To prove to everyone that I worked...
what?
That I was somebody.
Oh, you are so full of crap. You're 5 feet nothing. 100 and nothing. And you got hardly a speck of athletic ability. And you hung in with the best college football team in the land for 2 years. And you're also gonna walk out of here with a degree from the University of Notre Dame. In this lifetime, you don't have to prove nothing to nobody except yourself. And after what you've gone through, if you haven't done that by now, it ain't gonna never happen. Now go on back.
Sorry I never got you to see your first game in here.
Hell, I've seen too many games in this stadium.
I thought you said you never saw a game.
I've never seen a game from the stands.
You were a player?
I rode the bench for 2 years. Thought I wasn't being played because of my color. I got filled up with a lot of attitude. So I quit. Still not a week goes by, I don't regret it. And I guarantee a week won't go by in your life you won't regret walking out, letting them get the best of you. You hear me clear enough?
Okay, so in that scene, Rudy is having a conversation with a man named Fortune, right? And even though it's the two of them talking, Fortune really takes a minute and speaks to Rudy for a long time and reveals a lot about himself, right? We learn that he used to be a player, and we learn a lot more about his personal backstory. The third type of dramatic monologue is a romantic monologue, which is pretty self-explanatory. So this clip is from the movie 10 Things I Hate About You, and a romantic monologue usually involves like some sort of profession of love. So once this loads, we will watch this.
I hate the way you talk to me and the way you cut your hair. I hate the way you drive my car. I hate it when you stare. I hate your big dumb combat boots and the way you read my mind. I hate you so much it makes me sick. It even makes me rhyme. I hate it. I hate the way you're always right. I hate it when you lie. I hate it when you make me laugh. Even worse when you make me cry. I hate it when you're not around and the fact that you didn't call. But mostly I hate the way I don't hate you. Not even close. Not even a little bit. Not even at all.
What's left to say?
Okay, so in that one, Julia Stiles, right, kind of gets up and professes her love for Heath Ledger, which can't blame her, but that is a romantic monologue. And it actually sets us up pretty perfectly because the movie 10 Things I Hate About You is actually based on a Shakespeare play. And today, the dramatic monologue that we're going to read together is called The 7 Ages of Man. And it's from the play As You Like It, which was written by William Shakespeare. You may actually, whether you realize it or not, have heard or read this poem before. It's also called All the World's a Stage. So I actually have a TED Talk of someone reading the poem. So go ahead and follow along on your worksheets while this is read. If it loads. Okay. Oh, maybe not.
All the World's a Stage, from As You Like It, by William Shakespeare. All the world's a stage. and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts, his acts being 7 ages. At first the infant, mewling and puking in the nurse's arms, and then the whining schoolboy, with his satchel and shining morning face creeping like snail unwillingly to school. And then the lover, sighing like furnace with a woeful ballad made to his mistress' eyebrow. Then a soldier, full of strange oaths and bearded like the pard, jealous in honor, sudden and quick in quarrel, seeking the bubble reputation, even in the cannon's mouth. And then the justice, in fair round belly with good capon lined, with eyes severe and beard of formal cut, full of wise saws and modern instances. And so he plays his part. The 6th age shifts into the lean and slippered pantaloon, with spectacles on nose and pouch on side, his youthful hose well saved, a world too wide for his shrunk shank, and his big manly voice turning again toward childish treble, pipes and whistles in his sound. Last scene of all, that ends this strange, eventful history, is second childishness and mere oblivion. Sans teeth, sans eyes, sans taste, sans everything.
Okay, so I know that Shakespeare can be overwhelming sometimes, okay? And I'm sure we're all like, what is going on? But let's go ahead and break this thing down, okay? So before we pick this thing apart, let's just look at the first couple of lines. It says, all the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts, his acts being 7 ages. Okay, even if you still have no idea what's going on, let's just look at that very first line. All the world's a stage. Okay, so let's think about that. We have our world, okay, or life, and our speaker is comparing our life to a stage, right, a performance. Then if we move on to the next line, the men and women are merely players. Players could be another word for actor or actress. So we have our life being compared to a stage, and we are acting out our lives, okay, as part of a performance. If we move on to the bottom part, it says one man in his time plays many parts, right? Like plays many different characters, and that those different parts are 7 ages. Okay, so if we look at our very first question on the right-hand side, it says that this poem is an extended metaphor. We've talked about that before. Even if you don't remember what that means, just think about what a metaphor is, right? It's when you compare 2 unlike things and you don't use like or as, okay? And extended just means it goes on for a long time. So this whole poem is a comparison of 2 unlike things. So if we return to these first couple lines in yellow, right, we've kind of already figured that out. He's comparing life to a performance on stage, right? And that we are acting out the different phases of our lives. Okay? According to the speaker, okay, there are 7 different parts to this performance, okay, or to your life. The first is when you're an infant, when you're making noises and puking all over nurses, okay, and then you grow up a little bit. And the second stage is a whining schoolboy with his satchel, creeping like a snail to school. Okay, so now we have kind of like an adolescent, right? Someone maybe in elementary school who creeps like a snail unwillingly, right? Which sounds like probably most of us, moving slowly in the morning when we used to go to campus. And then the boy grows up a little bit more and becomes kind of an adolescent teenage lover, right? Someone who is experiencing their first romance and is so like swept up in the moment that they're writing a woeful ballad about their mistress's eyebrow, right? Think about people maybe you know or romances you've seen on TV who are so like over the top that they, would like go so far as to write a poem about an eyebrow. You know what I mean? Just kind of that like exaggerated, intense love. After experiencing some teenage phases, right, then we have kind of a young adult. We have a soldier who is bearded like the pard, who's sudden and quick to fight, right, who's jealous in honor, very impulsive, and is seeking a reputation, cares a lot about what other people think, right, which is pretty on par for most young adults, right, tend to think that they're invincible, want to take big risks, okay, but that phase passes as well. And then you're on to the fifth one, where this soldier has grown into an adult man, right? Has a round belly, severe eyes, and a formal beard, right? Has kind of like shed that risky and impulsive side of himself and is now full of wise sayings and experiences, right? Definitely more of an adult. In the sixth stage, the man is now old. He's an old man, right? He's wearing a slippered pantaloon, right? Big pants, glasses on his nose, a cardigan, right? He used to be youthful, but now his body has shrunk, and what once was a really manly voice is now childish, right? Wispy, pipes and whistles in his sound. Okay, you lose a lot of your volume, both physically and verbally, when you become really old. In the final scene, right, the end of this performance, the end of this life, is really similar to the first scene, right? You go back to kind of childishness and a lack of awareness. And then the very last line says, sans teeth, sans eyes, sans taste, sans everything. And in a second, we'll return to like what that means. Okay, but overall, this poem is describing 7 different stages of our life cycle. Okay, hopefully that breakdown makes the understanding this poem a little bit easier. I do want to return to the first 2 stages, right? Being an infant, making noises and puking all over everywhere. And then if we look at these words that are used to describe being a schoolboy, okay, we have words like, we have words like whining, we have words like creeping, unwillingly, okay? Those are really negative words that might imply that our speaker did not have a happy childhood, right? Maybe he didn't like school. That wasn't the place for him, right? Either way, it doesn't seem like he has very fond memories of his childhood. Okay? I've highlighted a couple of things in blue. I have creeping like snail unwillingly to school, the lover sighing like a furnace, and then I have the soldier bearded like the pard. Hopefully that's enough of a clue and you can figure out what type of literary device all of those are. Okay? In some of the poems we've read, there has been a very distinct rhyme scheme, right? And we label it A, B, or whatever it happens to be. In this poem, what I'm asking you to do is not label the rhyme scheme. Okay, I'm asking you to look at the last word in each line, right? Stage, players, entrances, parts, infant, arms, etc. And decide, does this poem have a rhyme scheme? Okay? You do not need to label it, but I just want you to look. Does it have one? Maybe it only has one for half of the poem. Okay, maybe there isn't one at all. Why look at, all I'm asking you to do is look. Okay, see if there is one. If there is, tell me yes, and then where. And if there isn't one, then just say no. Okay? The very last question on here has to do with that last line, right? The final stage. When you kind of return to childishness, and it ends with sans teeth, sans eyes, sans taste, sans everything. The word sans is French for without. Okay, so in the end of our lives, in this final stage, okay, our speaker is saying that we will be without our teeth, without our vision, right? Without the ability to taste, without anything. Okay, which is pretty true. When you die, you can't take anything with you. And you go out of this world the same way that you came into it. So it's very much a cycle, right? That circle of, not to be funny, but the circle of life. So when we scroll down, I have a couple of comprehension questions here for you. The first is, what are the 7 ages of man? I talk through each one, so hopefully listing those in order shouldn't be too tough. Question 2, according to the speaker, what happens to the people in the last stage of life? We just chatted about that, so hopefully that won't be too tough to answer. Okay. 3, the speaker of this poem, as we mentioned, is comparing life to people performing on stage. Okay, the speaker could have compared life to anything, to a butterfly, to cookies being put in the oven, to puppies playing on the beach. Why do you think the speaker chose to compare our lives to actors performing on a stage? Okay, kind of like explain why you think this is the comparison that was being made, and what that comparison has to say about the speaker's view of life, right? Could have chosen anything. Why did they choose a performance? Lastly, this speech is taken from a bigger Shakespeare play, and the character who gives this speech in the play is named Jacques, I don't know, who is often described as being really negative or pessimistic or having a negative outlook on life. Do you think that the speaker of this poem, Jacques has a gloomy outlook on life, or do you think he has a positive outlook on life? What do you think, based on this poem, is his attitude on life? Support your answer with details from the poem. Once you finish breaking down that poem, it is your turn. On Canvas, I have provided 6 different dramatic monologues. Okay, I have one from Breaking Bad, one from Shawshank Redemption, one from The Notebook, one from Jaws, one from the movie Love Actually, and one from the movie Titanic. Just so you know, Shawshank Redemption and The Notebook have questionable language, so keep that in mind. What I would like you to do is you only have to choose one. Tell me which monologue you've chosen, which type of dramatic monologue it is, right? Is it psychological, romantic, conversational? Look at those definitions and tell me which one. And then tell me what the monologue you've chosen reveals about the speaker, right? Think about what it might reveal about their personality, how they're feeling, their motivation. Maybe they have a really interesting backstory. Okay, what does the speech reveal? And then lastly, choose one important line from the monologue and explain its significance. I want you to literally write the line below and then tell me why you chose that line. Does it reveal a key piece of information? Is it an example of figurative language? Did it just stand out to you? Tell me why you've chosen that line. Okay, once you're finished, turn it into Canvas. You got it.